Today we will study the poem Kubla Khan written by S.T. Coleridge. S.T. Coleridge is greatest poet of the Romantic age. Its subtitle is Kubla Khan or a vision in a dream, a fragment. So, first of all, before reading the poem, before enjoying this beautiful poem, we should know what is actually Coleridge is. It was a romantic age. It was considered as an artistic, a literary, and intellectual movement. It originated in Europe towards the end of 18th century, and both William Wordsworth and Samuel Coleridge, their common work, Lyrical Ballads, it published in 1798. So, from 1798, it is considered that the starting of the Romantic age. So, these two were the major romantics of the age. Romantics, as it suggests, it is a kind of imagination, emotion, and individuality, sensibility, and it replaced the earlier age, of Johnson, that was neoclassical age. It replaced the idea of objective to subjective. Writers of this era writers themselves as the most interesting subject. So they pick up themselves as the most interesting subject. Their interest mostly was in nature and solitude. So they asked to us that we should go back to nature, we should go back to our native tradition. That's why it has been replaced by the era of reason and logic. In this romantic age, heroic couplet that was earlier used to, it replaced by the ballads. So here this Kubla Khan, it is also a kind of ballad and romance. Although sonnet, Ottawa rima, blank verse, it was also very famous. So in the romantic poetry, what we found, it was an impact of new forces. The new forces were liberty, equality, and fraternity. Because with Wordsworth, Coleridge also gave focus on dignity, goodness, and power of common man. So these values were also there in the romantic poetry. So now we shall start the poem. In the first stanza, this poem starts like, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Elf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girded round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, and blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. And here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of the greenery. So here in this line, poet is dreaming something. He is dreaming like a vision. First he dreamed, and then suddenly started writing his dream. So some of the dreams were there in his memory and some were erased. But that's why it is also called a kind of fragment. Means half things are there in his memory and half is not there. But he is writing this poem. It is a kind of dream for him. It was a dream in his sleep. So poet has seen Jandu, Jandu is a kind of city. Poet in the influence of opium means poet was in taking opium, and he was very much influenced of the opium when he was writing this poem. It describes a place named Jandu. Jandu and the Emperor of China. Emperor of China is called Kubla Khan. So this is the we can say a mythological character or a historical character. After waking from a dream, Coleridge starts writing this poem, but he interpreted by a person. What happens, suddenly his friends comes and he interprets all the dreams to him, and that very person asks him to write this poem, and he starts writing this poem, but it left unfinished. So it is a kind of vision in a dream, but a fragment. So this is a good example of romantic poetry, because an artistic, literary, and musical and intellectual movement that originated in Europe in 18th century. All these good qualities are also there in the poetry of Coleridge. Characterized by individualism, that is also there in Kubla Khan, it glorifies the past, because Coleridge is talking about the past, the historical character. It also glorifies the nature and medieval time. So he has taken the character from the medieval history, the great emperor, that is Kubla Khan. So it was the influence of the Industrial Revolution and the aristocratic society that his love for literature, music, painting, art, all things are there in this single poetry, and we get all the things in this beautiful example of romantic poetry. Poet Kubla Khan is very much influenced by Coleridge's idea of liberalism, radicalism, and conservatism. All things are there in a single poem. So now we should talk about the source for the Kubla Khan. Coleridge has taken the source of the Kubla Khan from Parchas Pilgrim. It is a book that Coleridge has taken the source from this book. The main idea of the Kubla Khan is to describe the power of imagination. It says it is all about the imagination of the Coleridge, and he creates how the poet experiences a dream in the sleep. So he makes a connection to the universe through the inspiration. What kind of poem is this? It is a kind of the chant like musical piece. It is written in iambic pentameter and altering the rhyme scheme. The description of the place is a stately pleasure dome degree, a huge, fancy, and beautiful palace that is built here in Jandu. Jandu means a place where Kubla Khan, the Mongol emperor, establishes his summer capital. So, pleasure dome means a place of pleasurable entertainment or the creation, a resort kind of thing. And the tone of this poem is calm and reasonable environment, a sacred river flowing through the forest, ancient as the hills. So this kind of tone is there, a calm and reasonable environment. And there are some symbols also. Dome is a symbol. It symbolizes for a state, a safe, sunny, happy palace, and it stands for the majesty and the triumph of mankind. It also suggests some historical victory of some emperor, since it is the house of the emperor. That's why dome is also symbolizes some happy palace, some majestic building. It is also called as a fragment poem because it could not be written down because he was the Coleridge. The poet was in the drowsy situation because he was in the form of he was taking the opium. He was addicted to opium, and it is called the romantic poem because Kubla Khan is a romantic poem because it believes in imagination. It believes in the power of imagination. It is shaping of disappearing visions into create some forms. So Coleridge's idea of fancy and imagination is also here. He's using the term river elf. This river elf presents fiction and it also represents power and force of natural world. So this was the little introduction of the poem. The main text of the poem we will study in or another video. Thank you, dear friends.